Hey, so we're looking at John chapter 1, verse 9. We're hoping that God will shed some light on his word. Okay, so verse 9, that was the true light, that's Christ, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. That was the true light which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. So my notes are saying every man. So the focus should be on every man. Why? Because the question is, does Christ light every man? In other words, does Christ make spiritually alive every man? Is that what God is saying here? So if we look at Hebrews 2:9, we see Christ should taste death for every man in the sense that he would taste death for all whom God would save. So let's go to Hebrews 2:9. Hebrews 2, verse 9. Okay, we see. Oh, we got notes here too. Verse 9. But we see Jesus, who was made a little lower than angels for suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor, that he, by the grace of God, should taste death for every man. So, what is God saying here? Christ should, by the grace of God, should taste death for every man. Okay, is that true? Did Christ die for every man? Did Christ die for every man? So, if Christ died for every man, so then none would be judged, right? None would fall under God's judgment because payment was made. If he tasted death for every man, payment was made for every man. So unless we don't understand every man, Christ died for every man. So payment was made for every man. So none would taste death in the sense of spiritual death, eternal death, separation from God. So every man will, I mean, we could stretch it out. It implies that will every man will, in the end, be judged innocent because Christ has suffered or tasted death for every man. Okay, unless we're misreading this, let's go to Matthew 24:36, Matthew 24 and Mark 13:32. Okay, Matthew, I got notes. 24:36. Matthew 24. Okay, verse 36. Now learn a parable of fig tree. No, wrong one. Okay, but of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. So when I originally read this, I thought the focus was on the hour of Christ's return. If you read the entire passage, it's talking about Christ's return. But if you meditate on this verse and think about it carefully, the hour is the hour of judgment, but of that day and hour. So whose judgment? It's, well, mankind, and ultimately Christ, in that he went to the cross for mankind. So no man knows the punishment that Christ would have to endure on the behalf of man or men, all of us, every man, except the Father only. Not, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. So from this, we can safely say that we do not know if Christ died for every man or only for those whom God the Father intended to save. So the punishment was doled out by the Father. Of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. So Christ himself did not know whom he would be suffering for. We got indication in the previous verses we looked at earlier that Christ would die for every man, all men. But from this verse, we have to acknowledge that we do not know if he died for all men. Is it a contradiction? No. We just do not understand what every man is defined as. So, Bible, this is key. The Bible defines itself. So every man potentially can represent all men, but based on this verse and Mark 13:32, we see that. Let's go to Mark 13:32. Mark 13:32. We see, but of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels which art in heaven, neither the Son. So the Son doesn't know the punishment that he would have to endure on behalf of mankind, all men, but the Father. So only the Father knows what the punishment will be. If he will have to endure judgment, we're saying the hour represents the hour of judgment that Christ would have to endure on our behalf for those who've been spiritually made alive. So going back to the verse that we were initially looking at, John chapter 1, verse 9. That was the light, Christ, which lighteth, which spiritually makes alive, which lighteth every man. So the question is, does or will Christ make every man spiritually alive that cometh into the world? Okay, based on what we have read, we can honestly say we don't know who Christ will make spiritually alive. We don't know what every man represents. Okay, that's it. How do we stop this? Stop, stop, stop.